Hello, hello. Welcome to another episode of CEO Conversations, the private practice podcast. This episode is actually an episode that is near and dear to my heart. So it is with a longtime client of mine, Niesia Garza, who is a therapist and the CEO and founder of Daniels Harbor in Florida. She has a heart-wrenching story about her son, Daniel. And when we talk about purpose, when we talk about mission, when we talk about vision, Niesia is all of that. Her son, Daniel, died at 2.5 years old. And that is the story and the foundation that Daniels Harbor is built on. Over the years that I've worked with Niesia, one of the things that we have tried to definitely garner is confidence in telling your story. And so part of this episode came because Niesia is trying to get comfortable with telling her story, her beautiful story about her son. And so we used today's episode as a way to provide coaching for Niesia, to give her practice in order to tell her story. It's a moment that I am excited to be able to give the clients that I work with, because at the end of the day, there is a person behind the clinician, and there is, I think, a stigma that when you have things that are happening, hard things that are happening in your life, that you have to show up and be perfect. You are not a robot, you are human, and this episode is going to draw you in from the human side of the work that we do. And so if you are in a place of going through grief, or if you are in a place of going through a hard season, then this is an episode that you're definitely going to want to listen to. Niesia gave so many nuggets of how she's been able to navigate the trauma that she's gone through, how she's been able to heal from the trauma that she's experienced, and where she's at on the other side of that, and also how she's been able to build a practice at the same time while experiencing some of her grief too, and even though she's healed in certain aspects of it, it doesn't mean that grief just completely goes away, right? And so I think it's just, again, it's a very powerful episode. And so I appreciate you watching this if you continue to watch, and I definitely appreciate you listening to it, because this was an exercise for Niesia, and I'm so proud of her for doing this work, because this is a hard story to tell. She was willing to share it. It was part of her healing journey, and I feel very blessed to be able to have the opportunity. So without further ado, here's Niesia Garza. Welcome to CEO Conversations, the private practice podcast. I'm your host, Brandy Mabra. It's time to show up as a confident leader to create a practice and life you love. Niesia, welcome to CEO Conversations. I'm so excited to have you here.
Thank you, Brandy. I'm excited to be here.
Yes, absolutely. So we've worked together for a while, and I think that it's so great that you're here because you have such a powerful story, and your practice has it just goes so deep when we talk about mission, when we talk about vision, when we talk about purpose. Mm-hmm. Your story is one that many people don't experience, haven't even have the words. And I think it's just so powerful for how your practice came to be and how Daniels Harbor is here today. Mm-hmm. So would you be so gracious to share your purpose, your mission, and the founding story of Daniels Harbor?
Yes, I would love to. Thank you, Brandy.
Absolutely.
So Daniels Harbor, we was established in 2009. But it's also in honor of my son, Daniel, who died at the age of 2.5 from a rare blood disorder, HLH. Me and my husband were active duty military Air Force, and we were stationed in Anchorage, Alaska at Elmendorf Air Force Base. Daniel, I have an older daughter. She was born in 2002. Her name is Natalia. And then Daniel was born in 2006 in Alaska. So our journey began when Daniel was about maybe 9 months. He had started walking. So he was walking, thriving, doing all the things that babies do. So he started to get ear infection. So he got an ear infection first. So he started off with an ear infection. He had high fevers. He had rashes. So they, with that, then he stopped walking, right? So he was regressing. But of course, they were saying with the ear infection, your balance is off. So that's what they contribute to him no longer walking, was because of the ear infection. So with that, he was diagnosed with RSV. So he was in a hospital for a while with RSV. Then then his face started drooping, right? But they kept saying it was ear infection. He's teething. It was just all the common things that kids that age go through, right? The high fevers was due to ear infection, high fever due to teething. So all those things, and me being active duty as well, we're kind of treated differently when you're active duty versus civilian and military, right? Our mission is to make sure we're doing what we have to do. So I felt like during that time that they were thinking of me as this overbearing mother, right? Because we were going to the doctors like every other week, it seemed like, and especially with the CDC, the Child Development Center, where he had to go to school when we were working. If kids had a high fever, then they had to be sent home, right? And they couldn't come back for another 24 hours. So we're constantly having to be at home with Daniel. So yeah, kept going to the pediatrician. Then they finally did a CT scan, and they're saying there was nothing, right? So there's nothing, you're seeing stuff, or there's nothing wrong with your son. He's fine, right? Until it was a Saturday morning, my husband Robert had went to men's Bible study, and I was at home, and Daniel was crying, so I went to get him, and then next thing I know, I saw his whole left side just was limp, right? So all that was limp. So I called Robert. We went to the emergency room, and it just so happened the same pediatrician that has been seeing Daniel. So I guess it was a bittersweet or blessing, because we didn't have to go through the whole story since he already knew everything. So they finally did an MRI, and that's when they found lesions on his brain, right? So he was rushed to the Children's Hospital in Anchorage. So that's where we went. And so since he had the lesions on his brain, they brought in neuro first because they didn't know what was going on. So neurologist was the lead doctor for Daniel. And then, so he started having seizures. He just kept declining. They kept saying, we don't know what's going on. Then like his spleen was enlarged. He had so many things going on. They brought in every specialist, right? Heart, every doctor or every specialist came in, and they didn't know what was going on, right? So it even got to the point where they shared with us that if we don't figure this out, your son's not, he's not going to make it, right? So the last person they brought in was the hematologist, right? So she told us that it was either two things. It was either leukemia or this rare blood disorder called HLH, right? So then, of course, it came to be HLH. Okay. So then, and there's two forms of HLH. There's the familial type, where it's genetic, and you get it from, it's genetic DNA, or secondary, which it can be caused by illness. So Daniel happened to have the familial type of HLH. So, and then we had to get tested, me and my husband and Natalia. So, of course, me and my husband are carriers, and we have the same defective gene that caused Daniel to get for him to be diagnosed with HLH. Natalia is a carrier. So then the only thing that it's a blood disorder, but they treat it like, I guess, kind of like cancer, because he did start chemo. But the only thing that was going to cure him would have been spinal.
Yeah, no. So it sounds like that the only thing that would be able to cure him would be what, like a spinal injection, spinal replacement, like
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
spinal fluid or a
Yes.
transfusion, like
Yes.
spinal.
Yes.
Yeah.
A donor, right? He had
Yeah.
a donor. Yeah, so, and my husband is Hispanic. So, of course, they were saying that finding someone that was biracial, mixed race, was going to be hard. And then we couldn't provide it because we were carriers. So all we would have done is given him back, since our blood was already has the defective gene. So we weren't able to provide him with that.
So the story sounds like there was a lot leading up to Daniel being sick, a lot of emotional pull. I think also what comes up for me is when a mother knows that something's wrong with her child, then a mother knows when something's wrong with her child. What also is coming up for me is that how broken our healthcare system is, right? And I think as we think about the profession that we have, everyone who's listening to this podcast is in healthcare. And I believe that everybody who's in healthcare is trying to change healthcare in some way, shape, or form as they're providing clinical care, medical care, treatment plans, like all of it.
Yes.
And at the end of the day, what also is coming up for me when I hear your story is that there is a person behind the clinician who has experienced real things. And so what I love about your story is that you've taken your story, and as hard as even it's been to talk about your story and Daniel's, just Daniel's health and Daniel's, even passing, is that you've been able to take that story and to make a big difference with, with his story. So once Daniel got his diagnosis, I hear you saying that he needed a donor in order for this to even be cured. You and your husband wasn't able to be a donor.
Yes.
And because you're a carrier. So what was the next step that you guys took in order to try to do some type of healing for Daniel?
So then that was, so with the chemotherapy, getting him, and then also researching the different doctors, right? Because in Cincinnati, the hub, there's a doctor there that actually specializes in HLH, right? So that was the goal of trying to get, since it was rare and nobody really knew about it, trying to get him somewhere where they did and see what we can do from there. Okay. So, the one in Cincinnati, and due to the stuff that was going on with Daniel, he wasn't brain dead, but definitely a lot of trauma to his brain. So he wasn't verbal, right? So he was no longer verbal, and everything else, he wasn't walking. So everything else, it was on, so we had to do everything for him. So he was no longer, couldn't feed him. He had to have a feeding tube. So all these things. So he went from this healthy baby boy to where he could no longer walk, talk, or eat, right? So then with that being an issue too, the doctors were, I guess, counting him out, right? Like, okay, there's nothing we can do, you got to think about the quality of life, but it's like, as long as he's still breathing, we want to make sure we exhaust all possibilities, right? So he was denied, and they said they didn't want to do the put him on the donors list since he was nonverbal, and then he couldn't tell anyone if he was hurting or not. So they took that away from us as well. So, but we end up going to Houston because the people in Cincinnati didn't want to see him after they talked to the doctor in Anchorage. So we went to Houston. There was a doctor there, Dr. McLean. He took Daniel on.
Like, how long of a time period was this before Daniel passed?
Daniel, so we started in 2007 because right before he turned 1, and Daniel died in 2009.
So it was about 2 years of going through doctor's visits and trying to figure out the best care plan for him too. So Niesia, with this story, how have you been able to use Daniel's Harbor to help with like the mission for healing, and what anchors have you developed inside of your practice?
So grief, right? Wanting to be able to hold space for anyone dealing with traumatic grief. Right, because we know that grief or death is inevitable, right? We know that we live, or we're born, we live, and then we die. But it's when those social norms, when a child dies, right? It's like there is no how do you handle that, right? You're dealing with the traumatic loss. And then also you're dealing with the trauma of it, but also the grief of it, right? So then, and unfortunately, we're in a society where it's still taboo, right? grief is taboo. Grief, nobody likes to talk about it. Nobody wants to talk about it. It's like it's contagious, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
with me, the people that I had around me, and knowing good intention, but it was like, oh, it's gonna be fine. It's gonna be fine. Trying to, because they're uncomfortable, so they wanted to make me to go through my grief quicker, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
you're fine. Everything's good. You got other kids. You got other kids. It's all those things. So I wanted to be able to provide a space for parents, but also anyone dealing with traumatic grief, to let them know that there's nothing wrong with them,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because it's like people look at you like you're, something like, okay, well, now you're depressed because you're crying, or you're stuck because you're still talking about it, or you're still there. But it's letting them know that because every day you wake up, it's there. It's not something that just goes away, right? Like I said, like I tell my clients too, a part of me died the day Daniel died, right? So I was no longer that Niesia that I was before. So trying to navigate this new normal that I didn't ask for, right? And trying to, like, I don't want to go down this path because I didn't ask for this path, right?
Mm-hmm.
So fighting that. So trying to help parents know too that where they are is understandable, and that grief has no, everybody's journey is different. There's no right or wrong way to grieve, right? Because you've never been through this before. So you don't know what you're supposed to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're just trying to do the best that you can, what you have, but also, trying to live in a world where, you no longer have your child,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then, like I said, even though you have, yes, and then at this time too, I had my youngest daughter. She was born in 2008. So, people are like, well, you got other kids. It's like, yes, I do have my daughters, but that doesn't take away that my son is no longer here. So, right. So I just want to be able to provide that space for parents just to come in, just to know that I'm not here. There's no judgment, right? I'm not here to judge you. I'm not here to get you over, because you're never going to get over it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I know as you've grown your practice,
Mhm.
you've had to coexist as someone who has had to navigate trauma and grief and still lead your team and still
Mhm.
come from a place of what the vision is, what's the purpose. I know that you have Daniel's Foundation
Mhm.
that has also helped with you definitely keeping Daniel's memory alive.
Mhm.
So, how have you been able to navigate being able to cope with your own grief,
Mhm.
plus still maintain moving forward with building a business? Because I think the conversation here is that there's the folks who will listen to this episode will be the folks who are experiencing very dark things,
Mhm.
things that are very heavy and hard. That when you put on, hey, I am in healthcare, I'm a clinician. I am, whether if it's a therapist, whether it's a physician, whether if it's like, regardless of your credential,
Mhm.
because of the expertise that you bring to the table, because you help other people heal, and because you're supposed to be almost like this superwoman type person. And that's not the case. At the end of the day, we're all human. We all have our own experiences. And I've seen you over the years to be able to navigate some of the things that you've had to navigate. So what do you recommend for people who are in dark moments or going through their own centers of grief? What advice do you have for them?
It's that we have to embrace it, right?
Mm-hmm.
We want to run away from it. We don't want, because they're heavy emotions, right? So we have to learn to walk with it. It's a journey now, right? And when it hits us, to sit in it at that time versus like, nope, I can't. I got to keep moving. I don't want to, like, well, I'm out in public, so now I'm crying. But it's knowing that if you just got to take that moment just to sit and just allow yourself to feel your grief, and then what happens is you feel it, and then you're able to finish out the rest of, whatever you were doing, right? It doesn't mean that just because you allow yourself to feel it doesn't mean you're going to get stuck or you're going to go down this hole. It's just saying that I'm acknowledging what I'm feeling, and this hurts and it sucks.
Absolutely. Yeah. So how do you lead from that place? Like, because I know, like, when we think about you giving yourself the time and space that you need during different seasons,
Yeah.
how has that changed your leadership and how you've shown up in your practice?
I think it's trying to help find the balance of being present, right,
Mm-hmm.
for our clients. And I think also having to learn that even we do have the business side of it as well, but it's learning how to balance, right? Trying to have that balance of being empathetic or ensuring that I am present and being there for my clients, but then also knowing that there's another side to it, and that me putting on that, I guess, business hat doesn't take away anything that I'm doing when I don't have that hat on, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because if I want to continue to be here for clients and continue to grow, then I have to think about the business of everything.
Yeah. So I know that you have, at this point in time, you have multiple providers inside of your practice.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm curious to know, how have you been able to maintain like the core of why Daniels Harbor exists
Mm-hmm.
while still growing a practice with intention
Mm-hmm.
and not losing touch of the mission?
And I think it's like finding the right providers, right, to bring in as my business coach.
Who's that? Who's your business
Miss
coach?
Brandy would, like, don't rush, right? Don't rush the process, right? Because that's what was the thing. Like, okay, oh my God, if I wanted to sustain, then but being intentional and taking the time to know to bring in the right people that you need to bring in, right? And being authentic, even to letting them know that, I guess, like I said, being authentic to myself, but also just showing them who I am, right? Letting them know, like, this is the mission, like, if you're coming here, this is what this is all about, right? I'm all about ensuring that we can provide a space, no judgment. I want to create that environment. If that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Absolutely. It makes perfect sense. Like, where you're creating a safe environment
Mm-hmm.
for your team and also being very intentional how you're growing your practice
Mm-hmm.
in order not to lose touch for why the practice was created
Yes.
and the foundation that it stands on when it comes to the name is Daniels Harbor. So
Exactly. Yes.
naturally,
Yes.
it's going to be Daniels Harbor,
Yes.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so I just think there's so much, again, there's so much power in your story. There's where when people think about something like the worst thing that can happen, and so I know with your story, that's right there at the top, especially as mothers
Yes.
and
Mm-hmm.
parents, and like to be able to not have your child here every day.
Mm-hmm.
I think the fact that you're even open to even having this conversation says a lot about the healing that you've gone through for yourself
Mm-hmm.
and how you've set yourself up for your own journey. So I'm curious, like, what did you do? Like, who did you surround yourself with in order to get to where you are today?
Therapy definitely
Mm-hmm.
was the main thing. Really, and yeah, it was mostly therapy, and I guess in my husband and and me and him with our journey, right? Learning from each other, because at the time before I have all the knowledge that I have, I was like, okay, why are you not feeling what I'm feeling? Why are you not grieving the
Mm-hmm.
way I'm grieving? Like, you seem like you good, like
Mm-hmm.
we're not good, right? So having to understand that his walk was going to be different from mine, and that was really hard to wrap my head around, because I'm like, okay, we both lost our child, right? And you seem to be ready to move forward. So just learning from his journey and seeing our daughter too, right? But like I said, therapy definitely was the big thing, but also church, right? It's that balance of, well, my faith,
Mm-hmm.
Right? Even though that, working through that too, right? Trying to understand or grasp, like, okay, why did this happen, right? Putting all your faith and trust, and then still having to put all your faith and trust. So,
Mm-hmm.
so I had to work through that, and then going to school to get my social work. So I think knowing I was on a mission, right? I wanted to be able to provide or just give, like, and also Daniel, we had some great caseworkers, right? So social workers, caseworkers that, said, just focus on your son. You don't have to do anything, right? We got this. So just wanted to be able to provide that for, even just for one family, right? To let them know, like, hey, you don't have to worry about those things. I'll worry about it for you. So I think a lot of it was just me in that moment, knowing I had a mission and just moving forward.
Yes. Yeah. So what I hear is that even a therapist needs a therapist.
Yes.
That's what I hear. And
Yes.
so I think that that's really powerful too,
Mhm.
because I always say, regardless of what specialty, you need two types of people.
Mhm.
You need a therapist, you
Mhm.
need a great coach, and
Mhm.
you need a community of folks that you can talk to. And I love what you're saying about you and your husband being in two different places and tackling your journey
Mhm.
in two different types of ways, and that's okay. I think we could use that analogy for so many different
Mhm.
situations where why are you not experiencing what I'm experiencing, and why does your experience look so different?
Yes.
And just making huge assumptions about what that means in relationships and
Mhm.
marriages. That would be like a whole other different podcast episode, so we won't go there. But it's very true.
Yeah.
So I think the question I have for you
Mhm.
is, how do you model like your leadership for your team,
Mhm.
and especially during hard seasons? Because I know I've seen you with birthdays and anniversaries and special
Mhm.
moments. Like, how do you do that?
And I guess, like, even letting my team know as well, like when I'm having a hard time, right? Just
Mm-hmm.
letting them know that I am human and I need to be present, right? With whatever's going on, right? And ensuring that they know too that we have to be self-aware, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
sometimes, even though sometimes your body lets you know too, because it's kind of like, oh, okay, yeah, it's that time of year. You kind of know when it's that time of year. But I guess for me, letting my team know, once again, being authentic to myself, but also showing them that I am human and that I'm going to, have moments, right, where I'm not, I won't say not at my best, but like I'm not thinking about I guess,
KPIs.
yeah.
I'm not thinking about KPIs this week, guys. I'm not thinking about KPIs this month. Like,
Right. So then, yeah. So yeah. So kind of just letting them know where I'm at in my journey.
love that so much. So
Mhm.
just being very authentic. So
Yes.
for the listeners aiming to lead
Mhm.
with both empathy and impact,
Mhm.
what's one small shift that they can make this week?
I guess really knowing that it's okay, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
okay to it doesn't take us wanting that impact doesn't take away the empathy, right? That it doesn't take away of being that clinician, right? It doesn't mean that we don't care, right? But if we want to continue to thrive or grow and expand, we have to think about the impact at times. So it's
Mm-hmm.
just, once again, I guess I keep saying it, but really just being true to
Mm-hmm.
you, to yourself, and really having that hard conversation, right? Because sometimes we like to avoid, which
Mm-hmm.
I'm known for,
Yeah.
right? So not avoiding and just sitting with it and checking in and being attuned with what's going on with yourself.
Well, Naisha, thank you so much for sharing your story,
Thank you.
giving us some gems of how to lead authentically,
Hmm.
in both being able to use your practice, because really anybody's practice is a vehicle to go deeper in your mission
Hmm.
and your purpose for life. So thank you so much for just the inspiration and sharing your story. So where can folks find you and get in touch with you if they're going through some things?
So you can reach out to us at www.danielsharbor.com, DANIELS, and then Harbor, HARBOR.com. Find us on Facebook and Instagram at Daniels Harbor Therapy Center.
So, Niesia, I've had the amazing pleasure to be able to work with you inside of Private Practice CEO. What would you tell people who might be listening who are curious about the program, what they can experience inside the program, and any barriers that maybe you've been able to overcome inside the program?
That Brandy is amazing, and the program is absolutely amazing as well. I found Brandy on Instagram actually. So reason I started looking because I felt like I needed something, right? I didn't not business savvy. They don't teach us this in school. So reaching out to Brandy and just having and first time our first conversation, her even coaching me then in that moment of like, what do you want? What is it that you want to do? Right. So yes, and just for Brandy offering a space like really there was no judgment, right? Like she just truly gave authentic herself and just it was easy, right, to let that wall down and to talk, right? Because I think that was the thing. It's like, oh, I'm so embarrassed. Like I shouldn't, like I should know this stuff. But Brandy, you were able to make that less threatening to where I could be authentic, right? Where I could just say, yeah, I'm screwing up and so,
Business is hard.
yes, exactly. Yes. But being and the program, just having all the tools that Brandy has been able to provide, even like the teachable, right? We're able to go in there. There's so much information in there and showing us like so many different things like, hey, how to talk to the payers to get an increase, right? Like how to do that or the job description. Like, so teaching us so many different things of the business aspect that I was missing. I was missing the foundation of the business, right? I knew we had the heart, but we didn't have the foundation. And Brandy has been working with me, and I definitely appreciate her so much for her patience as well.
Yeah, you've been a joy to work with, Niesia. So, you're like the original founding member of Private Practice CEO. So it's been just a pleasure being able to work with you over the years. And just thank you so much again for showing up today. Thank you so much for sharing your story. I know that this was one of the challenges that we talked through to get you out there. So great job. Great job.
Thank you. Thank you, Brandy. Thank you so much. And thank you, like I said, for getting me here.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's been fun. It's been so fun. Okay. So we'll see you guys next time. Thanks. Thanks for listening today. I hope you enjoyed the episode and it empowers you as the CEO of your practice. If you enjoyed the podcast, please make sure you subscribe, share the message, and leave a review. If you want more information and support in growing and scaling your practice, click the link in the show notes to take advantage of our free resources or apply to work with me directly. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.